Good. Right. Well, good morning to you all. About 10 days ago, I started an exercise with my colleagues to try and understand the likely evolution of this COVID pandemic. And we started at a global level and developed some global South African scenarios. And we thought we'd share this morning.
I do apologize, Dr. Cronje, I do apologize to jump in so early, but I think we did lose about 10 seconds worth of speaking there. So if you could just recap a few seconds.
Yeah, no, sorry, Herman. Herman will interrupt me if you lose my feed a little bit. I said about a week, 10 days ago, we started this exercise to develop a scenario set for how COVID would likely affect the world. It started at a global level, these scenarios. We're now busy working them down to South African scenarios. And that work's very much in progress, but we thought we'd share some of its early conclusions with yourselves. The order of things from me this morning is as follows. I'll start with what our objectives were in this exercise. The core assumption, which we base this specific scenario set on. Then I get into things we call key driving forces. Now, in the scenario world, the key driving force is a trend, usually a social, economic, or political one of such incredible importance that how it plays out becomes quite definitive in determining the outcome for a particular strategic problem. And the key driving forces in this case were picked because how they evolve will literally determine whether people live or die, or whether people are impoverished, or whether people will come out of this COVID thing in reasonable financial shape. Once the key driving forces are set out, there are 15 of those. I'll take you through how we rank them. Now, when we build scenarios, we rank key driving forces according to two measures. The first measure is what impact do we think this force will have on the evolution of the pandemic. In this case, we're studying a pandemic. The second ranking is how uncertain are we about that evolution. Forecasters typically engage in trying to overcome uncertainties. They are employed by their clients or the people they advise to beat uncertainty and to give the client a clear sense of future evolution. Well, within the IRR, I think we've got enough experience to be very cautious of that. And rather than trying to beat uncertainty, we often seek it out to try and understand what are the things that we understand very little about, and to use them, uncertainty essentially, as one of the units of analysis in our broader analyses. Once we've ranked for impact and uncertainty, I'll take you into the scenario matrix, and I'll talk you briefly through the scenarios and explain to you how we think the pandemic evolves in South Africa and some reference to the rest of the world over coming weeks and months. So thereafter, I'm done, and I hand over to my policy colleagues to talk you through some of the points of advice that they think the country should now pursue. That is based on an incredible document they've produced in very short time, a 100-page policy advisory report on how South Africa can best save lives while ensuring that livelihoods are not too negatively affected. At that point, we take your questions. My objectives are to try and help you understand the answers to these 5 questions. What is the likely trajectory of the COVID pandemic going to be for the world and South Africa? How long will the pandemic last? How will it affect people and their health? What are the economic ramifications going to be, and how should these be addressed? And finally, what will it take to stop the virus? Well, what is the end point? When we see something appear on the horizon, how do we know that that is something that heralds the world and South Africa moving out of this crisis?